What is going on, guys, and welcome back to the Sixers Digest YouTube channel. My name is Barnard, as always, and today we have to have a tough conversation about Tobias Harris. That the recent struggles of Tobias Harris are no secret. That they've made the mainstream media, they've made the local media. It is quite clearly right in front of our eyes the struggles that he is having, the slump that he is going through, and it may be time to pull the plug on the Tobias Harris experience. I want to break down why I feel this way, but first I want to preface this by just saying that I have a lot of respect for Tobias Harris, that he's been a voice of stability within the Sixers organization. He's the third longest tenure member of the Sixers on the team, only behind Joel Embiid and Furkan Korkmaz. He's seen his role change more than likely every other NBA player throughout his tenure with the Sixers, with there being moments where he's asked to more or less be a number 2 option on this team, as well as moments where he's been reduced to essentially being a 3-and-D catch-and-shoot style of player. Those during the James Harden, Joel Embiid years. He's gone up and down the pecking order, handled things in stride, kept a positive outlook, and been a very vocal leader within this team, which was necessary during many various stretches of recent Sixers years. But we have kind of approached what I believe should be the light at the end of the tunnel. Now, what sparked my interest in recording this video specifically is this report from Keith Pompey here, saying, quote, the Sixers currently don't intend to part ways with Harris. He wrote a lot in this article talking a little bit about the Tobias struggles, the outlook with the team, all those things. But I just think he's wrong in the mindset here. I don't think he's wrong from the standpoint of he's reporting something wrong, and I obviously get the Sixers saying this regardless of how they feel, but if they are closed-minded to the option of trading Tobias Harris, that is a straight-up mistake at this point in time. So let's begin by looking exactly at Tobias Harris's stats so far this year. In the 20 games that he's played this season, 35.2 minutes per game, averaging 17.4 points per game, 6.1 rebounds, 2.6 assists. His scoring is up from the past 3 years that he's played with the Sixers, that he averaged just 14.7 per game last year, that being one of the him seeing his role reduced next to James Harden. What strikes me the most and the biggest thing that jumps out to me with Tobias Harris is beyond the three-point line. That 3.2 attempts per game is straight up unacceptable for a guy who has a responsibility to be a primary floor spacer on this team. That is the lowest number that he has hit since 2015-2016 with the Orlando Magic, shooting 4.4 per game last year, 3.8 the year before, 3.4 prior to that, 5.0 prior to that. Those are all numbers that even then we were asking for more. And part of this is absolutely correlated to the efficiency, shooting just 31.7%. I'm sure when these shots are going in that he feels more willing, and that's part of the area where he's comfortable, and right now they're not. But you have to shoot through that and bank on things evening themselves out. Now, this unwillingness to be a catch-and-shoot three-pointer generally hurts him so much as a player. And every year we see this same cycle with Tobias Harris, that he starts off the season, he has this hot stretch where he's playing basketball that is conducive to winning in a way that typically is not. That he makes quick decisions, he gets downhill, gets out in transition, takes catch and shoot threes, is overall decisive. That is the number one word that I would say. When Tobias Harris is playing well, he's making quick decisions, he knows what he's doing with the ball. But then we see the version of Tobias Harris that is none of those things, that he's slow with the ball in his hands. He wants to over dribble, wants to get to his mid-range tough twos that are kind of his go-to shot for some reason, and then it kind of just sneaks back out. So he tries to stay in this box. He tries to stay contained, play basketball that's winning, but he just cannot do it for the long run. Same thing happened last year. We've seen this year in and year out where you begin to trick yourself, think, okay, maybe Toby is getting it. Maybe Tobias is understanding what this team needs from him, and then it leaks out. The old habits die hard. Now, the biggest point against trading Tobias Harris is the contract. That the contract has been talked about forever. One of the worst contracts in the NBA. Tobias Harris is the highest paid player in NBA history to never make an All-Star game, and he will be coming off the books this year, making $39.27 million this season. He will be a free agent at the end of the year, which will allow the Sixers to get that entire contract off their books. There's been so much chatter about the Sixers cap space plan to have the most flexibility as possible. One of the clearest pathways to that is holding on to Tobias and allowing him to come off the books, and then having that money to reinvest in whoever they deem necessary or the best decision there. But what really struck me and what's different about the Tobias Harris of this season, and really in the context of the Sixers, is the depth. That when you look at this Sixers team as currently constructed, that you can see that starting lineup of Tyrese Maxey, DeAnthony Melton, Tobias Harris, Nicholas Batum, and Joel Embiid. Look at that second unit of Patrick Beverley, Kelly Oubre, Marcus Morris Sr., Robert Covington, and Paul Reed. And even digging down to the third string when you bring up guys like Mo Bamba, Furkan Korkmaz in the mix, Daniel House Jr. still somewhere around, Jaden Springer still doing his thing. But the biggest conversation piece here is the competition for minutes with Tobias, that he plays a similar role to guys like Nicholas Batum, Kelly Oubre, Marcus Morris, and Robert Covington. So those are the guys that I want to talk about most specifically here. So I'm going to begin with Nicholas Batum. He's a guy who clearly has earned the starting role, occurred since the Kelly Oubre accident and the incident there with him missing time. He's an essential piece. Batum is an essential piece of the Sixers team at this point. The Sixers run a number of their half-court sets through him as the primary decision maker, that he's the best entry pass, a guy that can make an entry pass to Joel Embiid, the best on this team. He's a great connective passer. He's a much more willing shooter. He's got rapid-fire catch and shoot, one of the quickest releases across the NBA. That is an extremely important skill set to the Sixers team. Batum will continue to be the starter and should be for this year. Let's move beyond that. Kelly Oubre Jr. There's no doubts that Kelly Oubre is a better scorer than Tobias Harris, that he's a better shot creator, that he provides an offensive punch. He's also much better as an off-ball cutter, does a really nice job competing for rebounds. I would argue that Kelly's a better defender from the locked-in version of him that the Sixers have gotten so far this year. Now, that is not to say that there aren't moments where he spaces out and has had some bad defensive film in years past, absolutely. But the version of Kelly Oubre Jr. that has been in Philadelphia this year has been one of the premier defenders on this team, and I've been very impressed by that, and he deserves his flowers. To move on to the next guy, Robert Covington. There's no doubt that Robert Covington is a better defender than Tobias Harris. He's leading the league in deflections, leading the league in loose balls received or picked off, however you want to phrase that. His arms are everywhere. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. He's also one of the most willing shooters on the team. He's second in Sixers history ever in three-point makes, a guy that is very comfortable shooting with a little bit of pressure, which is something we do not see from Tobias Harris. That's a very important skill set. Even Marcus Morris, who is well past his prime, who, you can tell he's slow. You can tell he's not what he once was, but the guy can get a bucket, and the guy is not afraid to take on a defender. He's a better one-on-one creator than Tobias. I'm not going to argue about the defense. Tobias is a much better defender than Marcus Morris. I'm not a Marcus Morris guy whatsoever, and he is firmly in the conversation of players that I would love to move ahead of the trade deadline, with all due respect to him. But the biggest pieces that I want to bring into in this conversation are Nicholas Batum, Robert Covington, and Kelly Oubre Jr. What struck me about this Sixers team is all three of those players have skill sets that are more important to this specific Sixers team than Tobias Harris. That the way that you build a roster in today's NBA is you have your two stars, those very clearly on the Sixers being Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey, and then you have to fill out the rest of your roster with the remaining traits to surround those guys. I'm not debating that in a vacuum, Tobias Harris is not a better basketball player than any of these players. In fact, Tobias Harris is a much better individual basketball player than a number of players that I would be willing to trade him for. But it's about finding the right fit on a team, building the most cohesive roster that can go out and win, that can contend for a championship. So when you have Joel Embiid and you have Tyrese Maxey, you know what you're getting there. That you're getting Joel Embiid, who is up to first in MVP in the MVP race again this year, a guy that is leading the league in scoring for the third consecutive year, is one of the premier post and rim protectors in the NBA. He's the real deal. We know everything that he brings. His playmaking leap deserves a ton of credit this year. Then we got Tyrese Maxey, who one of the fastest players in the NBA, if not one of the best shooters in the NBA, been top 5 in three-point percentage the past 2 years. But he does have some issues on the defensive side of the ball. We know he's a little undersized in a lot of matchups. We know that there's some that he has to clean up, getting through screens and all these things. So how do you marry those two? How do you blend those two and put the pieces around him to make this team the best? A guy like Nicholas Batum is huge, that he can provide some additional ball handling, some additional playmaking. A guy that is a nice 3-and-D guy, a guy that can knock down shots, a guy that has a willing trigger with the jump shot, something that we cannot fully say about Tobias Harris. That is a lock for this. D'Anthony Melton, a nice complementary piece that can pick up some of Tyrese Maxey's slack that on the defensive end, that is. A guy that is a very good catch and shooter, a very willing catch and shooter. D'Anthony Melton, a clean fit on this team. Then we have a guy like Robert Covington, much better defender than Tobias Harris, much more willing shooter than Tobias Harris. Those are more significant factors than Tobias, who can dribble a little bit, who can play make a little bit, who can create his own shot a little bit. And we really just have not seen it. And for the people that complain about the Tobias Harris, it's the opportunity, it's the offense, it's not. If I want to pull up these stats again, let's look at Tobias Harris stats off this year, that he's attempting 13.1 field goal attempts this year compared to the 11.4 last year. But he's only shooting 3.2 three-pointers to the 4.4 that he got per game last year. That shot selection is what that is. That it is a bad shot diet of Tobias Harris. There needs to be more three-point volume. When Joel Embiid is a pretty mid-range heavy player, that he likes to play from the post, play from the mid-range, get up that area of jump shots, you have to counter that with the guys like Tobias Harris. It's the similar system if you want to bring up like the Dallas Mavericks, who have Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, who do everything that they do. Then they have a guy like Derek Lively, who is the rim protecting threat and the lob threat in the offensive end. Everyone else is there to shoot threes and play defense. Same thing with the Boston Celtics, that Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they have the freedom to do their thing. That they have Derek White, Drew Holiday also sparking on the offensive end. But the surrounding pieces, the Sam Hausers, the players like that, their job is to space the floor and play defense. Those are the caliber of players these Sixers are looking for. Now, we all remember this quote when it went wild of Tobias Harris talking about how Sixers fan would trade me for a crumble cookie. Crumble cookie is looking pretty good right now because Tobias Harris, this is the same version of you who wants to scream about not having the opportunity or sacrificing for the team. That in last week's matchup against the Boston Celtics, without Tyrese Maxey and without Joel Embiid, Tobias Harris scored 0 points in the second half. He finished with 14 points on the game. He struggled mightily, could not do anything, could not create his own shot, and that to me was a little bit of a tipping point for me, that it made me realize, like, if that was Kelly Oubre in that role, do I feel better about the Sixers' chances? And the answer is yes, and that scares me. And now, as you look for this missing piece, and as you try to elevate this Sixers team this season to a championship contender, I'm of the mindset that Tobias Harris is the first contract I'm looking to match. That you obviously have to come up with some type of salary to match what a perceived missing piece or star would be. One would think that is over the $30 million mark in the same way that Tobias Harris is. So, Tobias, while I am grateful for the services that you have given to the Sixers over the years, while I agree that you have gotten a bad rap at times, the unfortunate reality is you're just not a fit for what this Sixers team needs. It would be the best interest of the Sixers to move on from Tobias Harris, to find a guy that is, and go out and try and win a championship this year. The biggest appeal to holding on for him being the cleared cap space at the end of the offseason just is not good enough for me anymore. So, Tobias, it's unfortunate to say good riddance, but that's essentially how I feel right now. Now, do I think that actually happens? Probably not. I think it's more likely than not that Tobias finishes the season with the Sixers. I hope that is the end of the Sixers experience with Tobias Harris, just for the sake of needing new blood, needing to see something else, and we know how this Tobias Harris story ends. But for now, we have to keep hoping that he just improves his play. If he can start putting up more shots from perimeter, if he can get back to the trim the fat in the shot selection and making the right decisions, playing decisive version of Tobias Harris that is effective, that would be a beautiful change. But I think the unfortunate reality that we have to face is Tobias Harris is not a key part of the Sixers team, even though he is paid like one. Let me know what you guys think about all that, what your vibe check on Tobias Harris is at this point in time. I will be keeping you up to date on everything here on Sixers Digest. Make sure to hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and I'll be talking to you next time right here on the channel. Peace.